I'm here with Conradin Amft, the COO of T+A, and kind of heir to this company. Your father founded this company in 1978. When did you start working here?
First of all, good to be with you, Doug. Thanks for having me. I started in 2018 as a part-time position because during that time I was doing my master's in family entrepreneurship. And that was a program where you had to be enrolled in the program and also in the family business. And so that took place from 2018 to 2020. And in 2020, I came on board full-time as the COO.
Family entrepreneurship. That's a specific area study. What is that exactly? Like, is it succession of companies?
They try to prep you to lead a family business. So from the family side, like a family governance that you need to have, but also that you learn to really use the fact that you're a family business in marketing. There is a special field in, for example, finance that focuses on family business finance. And family business are a pretty big thing in Germany because we do have a huge swath of family-owned and family-operated businesses. And that really allows for universities to have these programs, which I took advantage of.
Your father, briefly, what's his background education-wise when he started this company?
He has a master's degree in, I think it's plasma or particle physics. And that means he's very well versed in physics, but also had to do courses in engineering, classes in, I think, even chemistry. So he's very much in the technical side of the business.
Okay, so where I want to lead this is you have a different kind of skill set than he does.
Absolutely.
And T+A, to go forward, is a very engineering-driven company, but it's also now a large company.
Yeah.
So what is the challenge of moving into this company for you in terms of leading the company? Your father's still involved in the company, and he will be for a number of years.
Sure.
But it's a succession plan.
Yeah.
So what is the challenge of moving into the company?
The first challenge really was to carve out my own niche, so to speak, because we've always been very focused on the engineering and the technology side of it. And I brought in a completely different perspective as someone with an undergrad degree in economics and the master's degree in family entrepreneurship. And that was the first challenge, to carve out a niche and to see if I can add value to the company. Because as a successor, you don't just want to be around because you can, but because you can really add a value. And that was the first challenge during the first 2 years, to figure out how we can work together, what I can bring to the company with my experiences, for example, in watchmaking, if that is helpful. And now since roughly 2020, we've figured out a very good way of working together so that Siggy takes care of all the technical details, which I'm not qualified, to be quite honest with you. I'm not qualified by training to deal with them, and I can take care of the business. That means HR, finance, and branding and marketing, which has become a huge part of my job. It's also the most fun part. I got to tell you, it's more fun than finance.
All right.
And that is kind of how we divide it up, which also allows us to kind of sidestep potential issues which might have been there if both of us would have been or would have come from a technology point of view. If both of us had a degree in physics, there would be kind of a competition by nature, which you sidestep if one guy's in technology and the other guy's in business.
Right. So, and I asked him yesterday, I said, what do you wish you knew more about when you started the company? And he actually said running a business and marketing when he started the company. But as you grow more and more to take over the company, how will you compensate? Your father's heavily involved in the technical side. Is there a plan? Do you have something in your mind how that will work in the future?
Absolutely. First of all, I need to acknowledge that we need to keep up the level of investment in technology and R&D that we have. So it's, with me coming in, it's not about scaling back and just pushing branding and marketing.
Because this is a very technically driven company.
Exactly.
Very technically driven. Yeah.
And that's what we want to keep up. So the thing is that what we are looking for right now is people to then step into parts of my father's role. Like, for example, when it comes to product management, that we really have people who are very strong in terms of technology. And we also plan to leverage our R&D team. You've met most of them.
Yeah.
We've always been run through a team spirit, so to speak. And that's what we plan to do, so that we heavily invest in R&D, that we can grow our own leaders who can then step in the role of making the technology decisions.
Okay. Now, I've seen your father kind of has a hand in everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you see yourself having a hand in everything the way he does? Or do you see more a hands-off to different areas?
I want to have a hand in everything, but maybe it's a bit different. Well, the hand will look differently. Let me put it like that, because Siggy is, for example, heavily involved in even detailed decision-making when it comes to the loudspeakers you guys just had. And what I need to do is I need to look at it from a customer perspective, because I cannot go into that much technical detail by necessity of my training, of my education. But if you run a business as the owner, I believe that you need to be highly involved in everything, but there will always be areas which you will be involved in more. So, for example, Siggy has a rather hands-off approach when it comes to the business side, especially to marketing, where it's more about me informing him what I'm going to do, what we are planning to do, but it's not him running the show. And I plan to do the same thing in terms of technology.
So one of your first projects, from what I understand, was the headphone project. T+A wasn't really planning to get into headphones. Yeah. You're younger. You saw a need for that?
It was kind of a personal and a business decision. I grew up with headphones. I was, I think, one of the last generations to still have an iPod with a swivel wheel.
Yeah.
And so I grew up with headphones. And when I looked around, all my peers mostly used headphones. So when they wanted to have a better system, it meant investing in better headphones, not in better speakers or necessarily even better amplifiers, better electronics. And that was the basic idea, where I thought this could be a great market. And we then went into the market research, looked at what we can do or bring to the market, what we could do differently.
And what year was that?
We started in late 2018. It took us roughly 1.5 years to make the headphones.
And was it successful?
Yes.
And what if it wasn't? You think that would have changed the trajectory? Let's just say, what if it wasn't?
To be completely honest with you, it would have been it wouldn't have been a great start, because if your first project fails spectacularly, it might be hard to recover from that. I mean, to anyone watching, no pressure. But the thing is,
because they're not inexpensive headphones either, at all.
No means.
No.
By no means. It would have made it, I think, much harder also for me to then introduce other projects, like, for example, the brand. Because if you start out with a project, you're completely new, totally unexperienced. I mean, I'm in my very late 20s, turning 30 next year. So I am inexperienced, and that's something I also need to absolutely acknowledge. So if I have an idea, it needs to pan out, because I don't have the track record to point to if something goes wrong, that I can say, hey guys, but I did 10 great things, so indulge me on that one stupid idea.
Yeah, it had to work, and it did work.
Thankfully.
And it did work. And now you're just moving into travel type head, more portable, what's Solitaire T, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is closed back, active noise canceling, and all that sort of thing, right? So it has been successful at a higher price. And what gauged the success, the sales or the result of the product?
For us, it's both. And for me personally, it's both. From a business perspective, a product needs to sell. That's something that we need to be very open about. You can have some products that don't sell, that you just have for having them. But in the end, a product needs to sell. And that was one of the expectations we had when it came to headphones, that they needed to sell, which thankfully they do. So from a business perspective, they are very successful. But also from a product level perspective, we managed to do what we wanted with them. They have the sound signature that we wanted to have. They have the build quality that we wanted. We didn't compromise on them. And so that really makes them a personal success in terms of the product and a business success in terms of the number of sales and return we get.
Now, I understand too, you changed recently. It wouldn't be the tagline. Like, it used to be T+A Elektroakustik, right? Now it's T+A Engineering Emotion.
Yeah.
Explain that.
When I took over our marketing operation, I think that was also in early 2020, we noticed that most of our communication was centered around the product itself. So it was about the product and each individual product, but it wasn't necessarily about the overall brand or even the idea behind the product, why we did a product. And so to change that, we wanted to start at the very bottom and then work our way up. And our company tagline that in the past had been T+A Elektroakustiks, hi-fi made in Germany. That was highly, highly specific. And so we said we need to kind of broaden that to keep what we are about, that's engineering, but to also introduce the goal that we have with the engineering, because the engineering is not a kind of self-serving purpose. But it's about creating emotions when listening to our products.
So you wanted to convey that. Now, do you see something in high-end from your perspective as a younger person, not just in T+A, but in general in high-end, that lacks in terms of the marketing? Do you see something that needs to change for companies to go forward?
That's not a political answer or a politician's answer, but I always find it very hard coming in as a young guy to criticize what others have been doing for
they've had success. They've had success, yeah.
And if there are people out there who enjoy what's been done, that's great. So when we see how many young people are now coming to shows, I think the industry is very attractive to young people.
It is very attractive?
I think it is. We need to understand that the focus is shifting now, that we have new means of entertainment like Netflix, Instagram, Snapchat, whatever. And that music is kind of taking a backseat to it, but we are also seeing a kind of counterculture movement to that, where people say, I'm turning off my phone, I'm getting off YouTube, I really want to try to focus on something. And if we as an industry focus on creating the experience for people and kind of trying to be companions to their live stations, because I think every one of us can point to, for example, a hi-fi device that we owned at certain periods in our lives. If we try to focus on that, I think we'll do great as an industry.
Now, what I think is lacking in the industry, we'll see what you think. What I think is lacking
Put me in the corner.
is awareness of brand names. In other words, there are potential buyers out there for this stuff. Not just T+A, but many brands, but people don't know it exists. They don't know that the brand, the products are even out there or what they do. Do you see the same thing? Or maybe is Europe different than North America?
That definitely is an uphill battle, so to speak, because many people associate certain brands with hi-fi that are competing in a completely different price range, and we are less well known than other high price.
But I'm not talking T+A.
Yeah.
I'm talking in general. Hi-fi brands aren't well known as they need to be. Put it this way, they're not Porsche, they're not Audi.
Or Rolex,
or Rolex.
Exactly. I think that's actually a very interesting thought, and I think you're onto something there, because in every other luxury or very expensive product category, people, even who don't know the product category, could point to a brand. So if you say expensive watch, it's Rolex. Expensive car, it's Porsche. Clothing, it's Armani, Gucci, whatever.
Expensive stereo, they'll say Bose or Sonos.
Probably, yeah. And that is something which actually kind of goes back to our brand claim, where we've seen that when we set up the new brand, we did market research with basically we showed people what we wanted to do, what we had done in the past, and we let them kind of vote on it. And I can only speak for T+A, but many people said that they felt that the technology wasn't necessary for how they listened. And so I think if we as an industry go back to creating the experience and not giving people the feeling that this is some kind of science that has to be kind of worked out intricately, but that it can be fun, I think we can become more well known. And it's, of course, down to each brand to do the marketing, to do the branding, to invest in advertising, and to attract new people. What you guys are doing as well on the press side, that we need to change with people's tastes. So it's now more about making content that is video, that is audio. People read less, and we all need to accept that and move more in that direction to get these people.
Okay, that's interesting, because that's what I believe is lacking in hi-fi right now. The awareness. A lot of these companies built at a time when people were demanding products. Mm-hmm. And now today, when they're not necessarily as in demand or people aren't aware, they don't know what to do. And do you think being younger, you can bring something to that?
Again, only speaking for T+A, I think we can bring several things to it. One is that we kind of lived through the changes in, for example, user interfaces, which I still remember nobody really caring about them as long as the product worked. No one cared if there was an app or what the product looked like. It
right.
had to work. And I think if we bring in that perspective, that can be helpful. Right. We have to be careful not to get over our skis, that we think that just youth is everything and new ideas are everything. We need to kind of balance it.
Yeah.
With the experience, I think it's on all of us successors, so to speak, to try out new paths. And of course on the people in charge to let us try out new paths, because what I have to say is that my father gave me huge leeway. The headphone project was a gamble. The rebranding was kind of a gamble. It was not a huge risk, but if both had gone wrong, the company would have suffered. And so you need both. You need the new ideas, but you also need the current generation to be able to see the new way and to give you at least a shot at trying.
And when he let you go with those, did he keep his hand in those, or did he just let you go?
In terms of the headphones, he was much more involved.
From a technical side.
From a technical perspective, exactly. In terms of branding, he was very hands-off. We had a few discussions of where we wanted to go.
Because he doesn't really care about that stuff, right?
He does deeply, because it affects the business.
Okay.
So it wasn't like just have at it and leave me alone with it. Okay. It was because he cares deeply about it, but he also knew that maybe new ideas or the new brand strategy would work out. So it was more about me briefing him on what we intended to do, and then executing from there and keeping him informed. But I had complete control in terms of what we did creatively and in terms of strategy.
So what else do you think you can bring to the company in the future? Maybe because of your age or because of a different perspective, because of your education or whatnot. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
There are several projects going on right now where we will see the results of those in a couple of months or years, depending on the supply chain.
Stuff we don't know about. Okay.
You will. You will soon. But I think there are several perspectives to that. So when it comes to the company, one of my tasks now is to also just make everything run more efficiently, like really get to the on the business side of things to increase efficiency.
And tell everybody, what is the size of this company? Right, like in square footage of the factory and number of employees, so people have an idea.
We have roughly short of 100 employees.
Okay.
And the square footage is, I think, something around 8,000 square meters. I don't know how that translates into square feet. It's basically 3 blocks. Yeah. Roughly 150 meters long, the entire building, and that's our size.
And in terms of hi-fi companies, I've been to many, and this is one of the larger ones. Yeah, it's one of the larger ones. So the perspective is, when you say run efficiently, you're running a pretty substantial operation.
Yeah, and that is one of the challenges, because we are relatively small in terms of our number of employees, but in terms of the scope of operations, we are very big because we have our own supply chain, we have our own production, we have our own R&D, marketing, finance. And so we are running basically an operation that is much larger in terms of scope than the number of employees. And that is one of the key goals that we have, to raise efficiencies there without doing it in a way of laying off people, but just to make the entire machine run more smoothly.
Okay.
And then in terms of product, we are now looking at, of course, new ways of how to interact with the device, because the basic question we are asking ourselves is, how has, or what has changed in terms of what makes a product special? And we think that people focus on other things much more heavily now than, for example, 10 years ago. So now user interfaces, customization is incredibly important, and squaring that with a hi-fi device is a huge challenge, but we are currently working on that project, and it's also a lot of fun because it really allows you to be creative.
Right. And so what do you see? If you were to sum up to somebody, if you were to explain, someone around your age, hi-fi companies aren't as well known.
Yeah.
How would you describe the company you're helping run? If somebody says, what is it you do? Well, I run T+A, and they say, well, what is that?
Yeah. Basically, when my father set up the company in 1978, it was really about two things. He loved music. He wanted to build a system that he loved to listen to. And he was also very curious. So we actually enjoy coming up with new ideas, with new technological advancements. And that is what's still the spirit of the company. So it's not about just harvesting technologies and pushing them out to get the biggest return on investment, but it's really about loving music and enjoying technology and bringing all that together with high build quality to really have that's a marketing term now, but a multi-sensory experience that you enjoy looking at the product, you enjoy touching it, and of course, most importantly, you enjoy listening to it, which is kind of important. And that is the spirit of the company. And what it allows me on a personal level to do is to be very creative, because of the size of the operation. You need to be creative. You need to do lots of things yourself. You need to be involved in, for example, running a campaign, being on a shoot, being on site with product. And of course, internally, it's about a business operation, but that's run working with people, because I know every employee by name, which is also good because you can interface and interact with them directly.
Because there's a lot of longevity at this company.
Yeah.
So you see a future in hi-fi and what T+A does, and it's not inexpensive stuff, and it's going to stay that way, the quality and all that. And where do you see in 5 or 10 years? Do you see it running the same, or do you see it drastically changing with what's planned?
I'm not a fan of drastic changes, because usually you can go right, but you can also invite kind of a pendulum that you swing in one direction and then you need to swing back twice as hard, and you just, it's getting unstable. So what we want to do is we want to move in the direction we have been moving, but ever so slightly tweaking our course to adapt, which we've done, for example, in marketing as well. When we rolled out our new strategy, it wasn't about let's do everything differently from now on. It was, how can we build on what's existing? And that is what I want to do with the company as well, because let's be honest, I'm here because of what my parents did. And so I think it would be incredibly ungrateful to just come in and say, everything's new now, we're smashing everything apart. And so I think that T+A will, in the basic spirit, always be the same. But of course, we will try to reinvent ourselves to come up with new things that people maybe didn't even expect we could do.
And I think, and that's all what I always look at with companies too, is when I go into them, I can't criticize a company that's had remarkable success or say you should change, because you're obviously doing something right. But on the other hand, it's got to move into the future, correct?
Exactly. You need to kind of square the circle there. We've been very successful with what we've done. And I think if you have the mindset that it's more about building on what has come before you rather than just only doing your own thing, you can actually square that circle by adapting to new trends, to new customer demands, but also understanding what the company is about. Because I believe that if people understand what a company is about, they're either attracted to it or they don't enjoy it. But that's actually a good thing, because if you try to appeal to everybody, you're essentially just a watered down version and you don't take risks anymore. I think it's important to take risks.
Well, that gives me a good feeling, because this is my second time to the company, and first time I was introduced to you and your father, and I wanted to know, I was really impressed with what T+A has become, but also where it's going. And that seems to be a good plan that you have.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks. Been great.